Wait for it. All right, I'm not going to ask everybody to sing it, but so yes, of course, Baby Shark. Greg Otto, you owe me some money, I think. So basically, funny enough, there's a connection between Baby Shark and the Nats. And, well, of course, Baby Shark and the Nats, but Baby Shark and cyber threat intelligence. Let me make that connection for you. June 19th was the first time Gerardo Parro went to bat with Baby Shark as his walk-up music. June 19th is the day that the Iranians shot down a drone in the Gulf. There is a connection. June 19th is the day that set forward an already escalating path of conflict, geopolitical conflict between the United States and Iran. Later that week, as things continued to heat up, and I was hearing from the private sector threat intelligence community that I was seeing my own telemetry from across the civilian agencies, that the intelligence community was reporting on increased activity, that we were fusing a picture, bringing together a range of feeds, or a range of sources, open source, the security research community, the intelligence community, civilian networks, to pull together a bigger picture rich with context of what was happening across US networks, across global networks, pointing back to activity from Iran. And so what we did as CISO, what I with my team did, was pull together these bits and pieces of information, understand what the techniques that were being used, spear phishing, credential spraying, or password spraying and credential stuffing, and then looked at those TTPs and said, okay, if I'm a network defender, what can I do right now to change the game, to take these avenues of attack off the table to defend networks? And so on June 22nd, working with my team, working across the interagency, working with our industry partners, I sent out an alert, a statement that said, hey, across the board, we're seeing an uptick. Not just this week, but over the past couple weeks, past couple months, in fact. This was hockey stick-like increases in activity. So as it's going up, what are the techniques they're using? Again, spear phishing, password spraying, credential stuffing. What can you, as a network defender, do to protect yourself, not just at work, but how can your employees protect themselves at home? And we provided a range of recommendations, multi-factor authentication, offline backups. Those are the sorts of things that we need to be doing more of. We need to be pulling together various threat feeds, building a broader understanding of what's happening in the ecosystem, developing a set of insights based on that information, and providing real-time advice. That's my agency's role. A year ago, I was standing here as the Undersecretary for the National Protection and Programs Directorate within DHS. Last November, Congress wised up and realized there needs to be a civilian agency in charge of cybersecurity for the federal government. That's why you got the Cyber and Infrastructure Security Agency. Our role is the nation's risk advisor. If you've heard me speak in the last 6 months, you've heard me say that before. We're not the nation's risk manager. You've heard me say that. We sit at the intersection of government, whether it's intelligence community, the defense community, or the civilian agencies and law enforcement, and pull all sources together, bringing in the private sector. And it's not just the security community. It's not just the cybersecurity vendors. It's also the infrastructure owners and operators. We get an understanding of what they're experiencing, what they're worried about. Because it's not just about what we're seeing the bad guys doing. It's also about the stuff that matters out in our critical infrastructure, in our industries. Can't protect everything. So we need to focus. We need to know what the bad guys are going after, and we need to start building up defenses around those high-value assets. So again, as risk advisor, we sit at that intersection. And we have a range of audiences that we try to engage. And classically, it has been that network defender, blue team, CISO community. Still, absolute core audience for us, putting information in the hands of those that can do something about it. But increasingly, we also have another audience, and that's the executives, the decision makers, the CEOs, the boards, the general counsels. I need to be preparing the battlefield so that when the CISOs walk in and say, we've got a problem, I need to make this decision. It is going to cause some pain on the business side, but it's critical that we protect our production. And I need to be able to establish some credibility for those, help establish credibility for those CISOs so the CEOs say, you got it, do it. Let me know what you need, here's the checkbook. We can do that by sharing context, not just indicators, but context around what's happening and why. We have a third audience as well, and that's the general public. The average American needs to understand what's going on, what's at stake, and why are things different. But we're also trying to do this in a way that's not fear-mongering, that's not all about, hey, the Russians are coming. They are. But that doesn't always help us when we're trying to get folks to make the right decisions. We need to put things into appropriate context. So I've said context a bunch of times. Context is king. Information sharing is a phrase that 4 or 5 years ago I had hoped would just go away. I hoped that with the passage of the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015, we would just stop talking about information sharing. Because information sharing had been bandied about as the silver bullet that was going to fix everything. It's not. Everybody knows that. Information sharing, though, is much, much more than just an indicator of compromise or an IP address of a bad guy's command and control infrastructure. Information sharing, when placed in the appropriate context, can make all the difference in every decision, in a decision that a CISO makes. If you think it's a nation-state actor and you're a CISO experiencing an event, it's going to make a difference when you're thinking through who staffs the SOC over the weekend. Context matters. Now, that's not to say that everybody needs ultimate attribution, that you need to know which group, which unit within the Russian GRU you're under attack for. So when we sit back and we look at intelligence, at threat intelligence, when we work with our private sector partners, when we work with the intelligence community, we can take the indicator of compromise that we pulled out of, or the IP address that we pulled out of the SIGINT, and then we can match it with the context, the rich context that our private sector partners have through their massive global deployments. And we can pull it all together, and we can say, look, we might not know exactly what actor this is, but we have a pretty good idea what the tactics, techniques, and procedures are for this adversary, or that they might use. And we can start developing packages of defensive measures. Going back to that Iranian alert, it didn't necessarily matter which specific group was conducting the attacks, or if it was multiples. We had enough of an understanding that these guys, when their back's against the wall in the region, they start deploying wiper attacks. That matters. That's different than the way the Chinese actors may work. They may be focused on intellectual property theft. The key thing that we're trying to get across right now, as evidenced in one of my closing lines in that statement, was we need to start treating every breach as if it's our last. Because if it's the wrong set of actors, it will be your last. They're going to burn down your network. So again, we got to start identifying where the risk is, putting context around the threat intelligence, wrapping it up with defensive packages tailored to protect those high-value assets, to protect the crown jewels. Start working from the inside out. So for intelligence and information sharing, we're looking again to fuse the intel with our insights. From our insights of 10 years of incident response within the federal government, 10 years of deploying intrusion detection systems, net flow monitoring across the federal government, the trends that we're seeing, the effective defensive packages that we're seeing, and pull those together in actionable advice and recommendations, actionable information and recommendations, not just to the blue team, but also to the executives, to the decision makers, to the folks that are opening up the checkbooks for those investments that might be needed. So with all that in mind, how do we work together more? Well, first thing anybody in here should do, whether it's now, wait a minute or two, or when you walk out, please go to CISA.gov, CISA.gov, scroll to the bottom, sign up for our alerts. You're going to see, going forward, a different set of alerts and advice products coming out. We're starting to ramp up again those broader general advice products, advisory products that help you understand these are the things that we've seen, these are the things that we've seen been effective. Try this out. But you're also going to see more about, based on our understanding of where risk is in the US, these are the handful of things, these essentials that you can deploy, whether you're in a just straight business environment or you're in an operational technology industrial control systems environment, that you can deploy to protect your networks, to protect your environment. So that's just one way that we can work together. We've got a number of other programs. They go by a range of various acronyms right now that will also be going away and introducing more straightforward concepts and program names, but information sharing programs and collaboration programs. Sign up for alerts, send us a note, ask us how you can get involved. But lastly, beyond your professional roles, we all have personal things we can do. What I'm focused a lot on right now is the 2020 election and defending our democracy against foreign interference. Every single one of us in here has a vested interest in defending democracy. There are things we can all do in our professional capacities and our personal capacities. I encourage every single one of you, wherever you're registered to vote, go down there, meet your election officials. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them if they need any help. Volunteer. Because ultimately, this is going to take an all-of-nation, an all-of-society effort to once again defend our 2020 election. You can get involved, volunteering, offering up some of your cybersecurity expertise. But you also have to be prepared as a voter. Threat modeling is a thing that we're starting to do a lot more of right now. Using threat intelligence, our understanding of what the adversary is doing, and then threat modeling, again, our understanding of election infrastructure and where the risky bits are. We start pulling that together, and we have much more actionable, outcome-oriented approaches to defending democracy and protecting our elections. Over the course of the summer, again, based on our understanding of what the Iranians might do, not necessarily knowing that the Iranians are going to target our election infrastructure, but knowing that they like wiping stuff. We've seen ransomware increase. What if there was this horrible convergence, this nightmare convergence of ransomware and election infrastructure? We got to be prepared. We have to harden these voter registration databases, and we are ramping up our efforts working with state and locals and the private sector service providers that are getting involved. But you too can play a role in a personal capacity. know what the requirements are to vote wherever you live. Know what happens if there's a bad day. Know that you can request a provisional ballot if all else fails. If a registration database gets locked up, if the poll books on election day fail, you still can go in and request a provisional ballot. It takes a little bit more time, maybe, to get that vote certified, but there are redundancies and resilience in place. And that's what we're focusing on right now. Understanding what the bad guys are doing, understanding where the risk is in the system, and building resilience in our infrastructure, with Protect 2020 at the top of the list. So as I leave here, again, implore everybody, do what you can, protect 2020. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.